Hello everyone, it is Cinzia from the Personal Philosophy Project, and today we're going to be talking about applying for a PhD. Now this is going to be a series of videos, so this is just number one about all the things you need to consider before we actually write the application and submit it. And this is important, don't skip this bit just because you want to go straight into the application process. So I'll link up here the video to how to write a PhD application, and also I'll be doing a video on how to write a cover letter for your PhD application. And if these videos do not exist yet, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell because they will be up very soon in the next few weeks. But the first thing we need to talk about is actually considering what we're doing before we apply for a PhD, because it's no simple thing that we can do on a whim, particularly if you're someone who's still at university, you're in the flow amidst of academia, the love of it all, the drive of it all, and you want to go for a PhD. That was me 5 years ago, very excited, but I didn't do my research into the steps before you go into a PhD and applying for it, because we have this romanticized version of what a PhD is and doing a PhD, and we don't take all the necessary steps towards that. And that can either bite us in the bum originally and we don't get the offer that we hoped and it would break our little hearts, hi Cinzia of 2014, or it actually can bite us in the butts later in life because we realise that we jumped into a PhD without considering things, and then we've graduated with a PhD that we didn't really want, or not in the institution, or with the right professor, etc. So let's talk about all the things you need to consider before we go to the application process. So the first one's really obvious, but we need to look at what kind of PhD you want to be applying for. So there are several things. We have our topic, our research area, of our subject area, depending on what you did your undergraduate in, or if you did a master's, what you did your master's in. Where's the next logical step for you to go? What is the best field and what is the best department for your research to do? And then we have to also consider whether or not you want complete freedom with discussing your topic, or if you're more than happy to have someone else dictate a topic for you, because there are two different types of PhDs. We have funded PhDs, and then we just have research proposals, which can be accepted, and then we go on from there. Funded PhDs can be fully funded or partially funded, and this is normally a PhD opportunity application that is published on findaphd.com, etc., where an institution puts forward a PhD proposal that they're looking for an academic to undergo for them, or a researcher obviously to undergo for them. So they put the details, they have the topic subject, they have the details, what you'll be studying. It's all very, regimented and detailed already, it's predetermined for you, and if you're interested in that topic, you can jump in and sign yourself up to do that PhD, and someone else is basically dealing with all the semantics for you of your research topic. This is an option for people who can't afford PhDs or don't want to take out loans, or are scared that they can't secure funding, so they go for a pre-funded opportunity. But obviously there are limitations to this because you don't get to pick your own research, someone else is dictating it for you, a supervisor has been selected obviously for you, it's a supervisor's idea, and you are just basically conducting that research for them. And this can be exhausting if you're not truly loving the topic that you're doing it in and it wasn't really your idea. The second version of doing a PhD, which is what I'm doing, is a proposed research project, which I came up with the concept myself, and therefore I had to write a very specific application for it, like my own proposal pages and all the details of my research, which obviously I will cover how you do that in another video, and a CV, which you have to do for both of them anyway. However, when you do your own research project, there's more liberation with obviously your research itself. You can change it and tweak it as you go along, which you can in the funded, but obviously you have more of a connection. You have less autonomy when it goes for a funded application because it's more of the department's research project versus your own. You have more liberation and you have that relationship with your supervisor. But the downside of this is the funding opportunities, which we'll talk about later. The second one is to really understand why you are applying for a PhD, why you want to do a PhD, why you should do a PhD. And I mean, you have to sell yourself to a supervisor or an institution and say, I should be the person, effectively like hiring, I should be the person that's doing this research because. And that also means that you have to A, be very vigilant in what you're researching, and be up to date with the research in your field, and have to fight for the fact that you are the best candidate. It's effectively like applying for a job. When you apply for a PhD, you have to say, I am the best candidate for this research because I know the research in this area like the back of my hand. And you have to also understand why you are personally doing a PhD, because as I said earlier, many of us have a romanticized version of what it is to do a PhD. We think we get to study for all these many years, it's like being students still, we get extended discount, and then we'll hopefully become a lecturer. Unlikely. PhDs are more than that. I will discuss what the realities is at the end of this video, but for now, really question yourself why you're doing this PhD. Is it purely for the title? Is it purely to stay out of the workforce for a few more years and try and become a doctorate and then hopefully a job in academia? And have you looked at the realities of this? And why are you the best person for this research? Like, why are you interested? What is your expertise? How have you contributed to the field of academia, etc.? The third one is to start prepping, become more familiar with the world of academia as a whole and start attending research seminars or events that are online. So there are obviously conferences that you can attend for free at certain universities, either in person, but at the moment they're all digital, which is even more efficient. You can attend university seminars that happen online all the time. You can attend one at Harvard University for free, or you can go to Oxford University ones for free. There are plenty of them. You can listen to the speakers, and this is, beneficial for many reasons. So the first one is you get to become more familiar with what's being discussed in the academic world, and you also get to see the realities of what it's like to be in the academic world, how people are conducting themselves, what are they talking about, what people are interested in, what universities are interested in supporting and platforming, etc. You also get to see what kind of questions are being asked and how academics interact with each other during these, particularly online chats. You can see how people are interacting with each other and what's expected from a dialogue between two academics or several academics. The next one, which is more beneficial to you in the application process, is actually becoming more familiar with the academics in your field, particularly potential supervisors. So if you are not familiar with a supervisor who specializes in your field, attending these conferences and seeing potentially a supervisor of some kind actually delivering a seminar or organizing a seminar, conducting one, you'll get to see their personality more, and this makes more sense and is more secure for you if you are applying for supervisors at institutions that you did not personally attend yourself. So you have to work with this person for a long time, and effectively you have to know if they're a nice person, if they're a good person, if they are genuinely interested in supporting other academics, if they are genuinely interested in your research field, and if they are as good as you think they are in their research field. So attending conferences and actually seeing academics, particularly potential supervisors, in person, reacting, interacting with other people, giving speeches, giving their talks, giving seminars, etc., you can get to know a feel for the people that you potentially want to pitch to. Or you can just be introduced to ones that you never heard of before and go, actually, this random person that spoke at one of the university conferences that I attended online was really interested. I love their field of research. I wonder if they're a supervisor. Look them up. They are. Pitch to them and introduce yourself, etc. So if you want to be able to attend conferences more frequently and find out more about conferences that are going in your field, I would recommend setting up an academic Twitter account where you just follow universities and departments within those universities in your field of study. So say you're a history or a chemist, you study the chemistry department at Birmingham University or St Andrews University, and then they will publish when they're doing conferences. Or you can find a listserv. Particularly universities have listservs that are very dedicated to basically everything from call to papers to conferences to seminars that are available or free classes, etc. And you can join in there and you can be inundated with emails every morning. I wake up to like 50 emails from a listserv sometimes. I'm like, wow, the classics world went wild when I was leaving. The fourth one is probably one of my favorite topics, obviously, because I love talking about personal finance, is talking about the funding options. This is really important. So obviously there are three different types of funding. There's funded, there is self-funded, and there are loans. So it depends on where you want. So funded and funding opportunities are kind of hand in hand. You can apply for a PhD position that's fully or partially funded, and then you can be open to funding opportunities. Funding opportunities are very heavily dependent on your field of research, so there'll be more funding opportunities for the fields, the science fields, than there will the classics and history areas of the world. Fewer funding opportunities, particularly in humanities, but like for even smaller humanities like archaeology or classics, very few funding opportunities available. So they'll be competitive, have to take that into consideration. Also, they're heavily grade-based, so if you're not getting the top firsts in a university, such as for ARC funding, the HRC funding, which is available for literature students and things like that in the humanities world, again, very competitive, tends to go to the top students, so funding opportunities are scarce and competitive, so you have to consider if you're willing to spend many years of your life every month stressing out about applying for more funding because you're running out of money. It's like applying for a job every couple of months. It's really stressful, and you have to keep doing it all the time just to get more money, because some places will just give you £100 and then another place may give you 50 and then someone may give you 2,000. You don't know. So you have to keep pitching for funding all of the time, and that can be stressful, and you have to consider that. Or you can take out a loan. In Scotland, there is no loan available. In England and Wales, there is. There is literally the same student finances that can be done for the undergraduate degrees. There's now a PhD version of that. So you can take out a higher education loan for the PhDs. So there are probably loans that you can take out if you want to get into more debt, yay. And then the other option is to self-fund it, which is my version of it. So I will be applying for funding when I have opportunities, but I'm not reliant on it. So if there's an opportunity to apply for some funding, I will do it. I will have a go. If I fail, it's not the end of the world. I won't lose my position in the research. I won't get into heavy debt. I have my savings, that's what they're for, etc. So I'd rather have that balance of not being stressed whilst also working full time and then having to apply for funding all the time. I'd rather just have my savings, fund it myself, apply for funding opportunities when they come up, and then hopefully just focus on my studies rather than stressing about finances. So finances are something you really have to consider when you're going into this. Don't take it for granted. Funding's not easy to get. So if you can get it, great. If you can't, think of other options. The next one's obviously the university versus the supervisor debate. I had so many people ask me, does the status of your university matter? Like, people are applying for the biggest, they want, you know, the biggest status kind of university, which is something that a lot of, you know, undergraduates and master students care about. So the higher rating your university is, the more status it has, it's better potentially for job opportunities. I say this, let's face it, it's only for Oxbridge people. So if you go to Oxbridge, you're effectively secure jobs for life, because everyone just sees it on a CV and they go, yes, I will hire the Oxbridge student. No shade, but it is the truth, particularly in the UK. So certain universities have certain statuses, and when you're applying for undergraduate and your masters, the bigger your status of your university, the more impressive it looks on your CV, particularly when you're applying for jobs afterwards. However, when it comes to a PhD, very different story, because when you apply for a PhD, after you complete your doctorate, particularly academic employers aren't really going to care about what university you went to. They're more interested in who your supervisor was and what your research was and how much you contributed to your field. Farewell, dog. So when it comes to applying for PhDs, please don't get snobby and pick particular universities because you want to go to that particular university. Focus on your supervisor, because your supervisor is the person that you're going to be spending a lot of time with for the next 3 to 6 years, depending on how long you do your PhD. And in America, it can go up to 9 years. Care about who you're spending that time with. Do you have a good rapport with them? Do you trust them? Are they a nice, supportive person? Do they give really honest, critical feedback but aren't, you know, viciously tearing down your soul? You know, these people are basically they're your supervisors. You're having to report to them all the time. They're going to be giving you feedback, they're going to be directing you, and you are their protege. And you want to follow someone who you trust, who you admire the research of, and whatever university that person happens to be in, it doesn't matter. Like, go for the person, not the university. So with PhD, supervisor above all else, because that's the most important relationship you're going to have for the next few years of your research. Now we get to the fun, soul-destroying part, is understanding the realities of the PhD. It's not as glorified as people think it is. Like I was when I was younger, I thankfully had this position where I failed to get my PhD, and during my 5 years out of academia, I saw multiple people complete their PhDs and tell me all the drama that happens between politics, finances, stress, poor job prospects, opportunities being failed, the university dynamics, like letting them down, politics with bad supervisors if they had a funded application and it wasn't the best supervisor, everything. And very few people want to stay in the world of academia after completing their PhD. The majority of the people I know have not. So I know quite a few people, I think 2 out of around 8 people that I know who completed their PhDs in the past 5 years actually stay in the world of academia, and they don't want anything to do with it after leaving it. That's the reality. It's really stressful. It can affect your physical and mental health, and you have to take that into consideration because it's going to be life-consuming. I don't even know how life-consuming it is, and I'm telling you it's going to be life-consuming. I am just on the little brink about going into it, and I know it's going to suck my soul in my spare time. No social life. Like, who, what, where, what is this thing? What is life after this? And there's going to be a lot of dynamics, there's going to be a lot of politics, there's going to be a lot of financial stresses, there's going to be a lot of traveling, there's going to be a lot of like, just a lot of chaotic stuff, a lot of stress. And it's a huge commitment. For me, it's going to be 6 years. And for some people, that's 3. And then you have to consider how that's going to impact your life period. So if you're in your early 30s, do you want to start a family and do a PhD at the same time? The intensity of your workload is going to really affect other areas of your life that you may want to invest in. If you want a wedding, but you need to pay for your own PhD, how's that going to impact it? You know, little things like this that you have to really consider the realities of it. And if you have an illness or a chronic health condition, have you got the support in place? Does the university that you're applying for a PhD support you and your needs if you have particular conditions or needs, etc.? Like, you need to really consider the long-term health and mental impacts that PhD is going to have on you, and the social impacts, how it's going to affect your life. It's very isolating, very lonely. No one else in your world talks about what you talk about because you're a unique candidate. You are the only person in the world effectively doing the research that you're doing, so you have no one else to talk to. And that's why it's really important to network and be supported. And you know, for me, there's a new dynamic. I am a distance learning PhD candidate and I'm part-time, so I won't be on the campus getting to know everyone on a regular basis. I will be very secluded and isolated, and it won't be consuming all of my working hours because I have to balance a job and my PhD research. And not only is it just a job, it's self-employment. So it's very much, I am responsible for my own money and my studies, and that's quite a lot of stress to handle. I had to really sit down and know that I was in a mental position to be like, okay, I'm going to undertake this for the next 6 years. This is the stress I want to put myself under, and that's it. I'm not going to be doing lots of ventures. I'm not going to be acting in plays for fun and just other commitments that would take far too much of my time away from what I'm working on. So look at the realities. There are not many job prospects for a PhD student, particularly in the world of academia, in the humanities. If you're going into the sciences, way better chances for you. If you're doing like green chemistry, oh my gosh, the funding opportunities are amazing over that. If you're doing art history or English literature, classics, we're not in the same fortunate position, and we have to take that reality in that we're probably not good. I mean, one of the first things that I said to my supervisor now in the interview was, oh, don't worry, I don't have any, you know, romanticized ideas that I'm going to get a job in academia. To which she replied, oh, good, because there's no jobs in academia and there won't be for the next decade. That was the frank conversation I had in my interview. That's the reality for a lot of us. So taking in that reality, that you're not going to become this Oxford Don living this romanticized life like you're in Brideshead Revisited. And the final one is to make sensible decisions. So like I've talked about, don't apply for a PhD at a particular institution when you don't know the supervisor, you never talked to the supervisor, that you probably don't get on with the supervisor. Don't apply for a particular university just because of its status, like an Oxford one, and then go for any old supervisor who you actually end up detesting and hating spending all your time with, because it happens to people. It's a reality. Do you want to go straight from undergraduate to PhD or straight from master's to PhD? Again, that has some consequences, because by the time you come out of PhD, you may find that your job prospects, you're 30 and you've never had work experience. Is that something you want to risk? Suddenly, not having your own finances to support you when you're into your 30s, and you may suddenly want to start a family, but you have no savings. Really make sensible decisions about doing this, because it's not something to take lightly. And I think because it's such a romanticized idea, it's a bit like, ooh, being an author, people don't know the realities of it, and they jump into things. They get excited. They'll just apply quickly without thinking about certain implications, who they're working with, where they're working on, what you're, because you're going to have to read about this thing for 3 to 6 years of your life. I mean, most people get sick of their PhD by the 3rd year. So I'll be doing it for 6 years. I'm hoping I'll love it. I have a reality that I'll probably get really sick of it. But who knows? Some people have great experiences and they never get sick of their PhD. Other people are 2 years in and they can't wait for it to be over. It's just a reality. So make sensible decisions. Don't do things just for the sake of wanting to do a PhD and just having that aspiration to have a doctorate. Why are you doing this, really? Why are you doing it? Is it because you want to contribute to the academic field in this particular field of like, I want to make a statement about this that I'm researching. I want to make a huge statement about it. I want to write thousands upon thousands of words about it and dedicate the next few years of my life to this subject because I want the world to know about it. Or you're just doing it because you want to have a doctorate and you have this idea like, oh, I could be a researcher for a living and I get to read books for a living. Why are you doing it? So make sensible decisions based on your finances, based on your background, based on your work experience, based on where you're located, etc. Please don't rush into anything when you're applying for it. So that is the end of this part 1 of applying for a PhD. And in the next video, we'll be talking about writing your PhD application and also your CV and what you want to do with your PhD, etc. It's a whole series. So if you're interested in the rest of the series, please consider subscribing to my channel and hitting that notification bell. And I will see you soon for another video. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.